The candle was a wax number 6. It was still burning when my husband tapped his glass. 26 guests went quiet, kids at the folding table, neighbors by the fence. My daughter had frosting on her chin. Everyone, one more thing before cake. Derek smiled the way he smiled at clients. Wide, rehearsed. You can always tell when a man has practiced a sentence. Cruelty sounds smoother the second time. Lena, you love Ella. Nobody doubts that. He paused right on the beat. But love is not the same as being here. She needs a real mom, a mom who makes the recitals, a mom who is home for the fevers. So here is what we are going to do. He laid a blue folder on the gift table. On top of the presents, on top of a card my daughter had made me with a crayon airplane on it. Sign here, keep your pension, and go. Nobody moved. Somebody's fork clinked against a plate and stopped, embarrassed. I was still in uniform. I had come straight from the squadron that morning to hang streamers. 4 days home from 3 weeks over the Atlantic. I stood by my daughter's cake in my country's uniform while my husband offered me a deal like I was a bad loan. A woman I barely knew stood at his shoulder. Sienna. A friend helping with the house, he had said. She had already cut the first slice of cake. She was holding the plate like it belonged to her. You have until Monday, Derek said. My lawyer says it is generous. My heart was a drum on a slow count. My hands stayed at my sides. Somewhere behind my ribs, a voice I had trained for 12 years ran the checklist. Observe, record, do not detonate. Ella looked up at me, 6 years old that very day. Mommy, is the surprise over? Almost, baby, I said, almost. Here's what my husband knew that afternoon. He knew mortgages. He knew leverage. He knew that a pilot who is gone 180 nights a year looks bad on paper in a custody file. Here's what he did not know. 2 towns over, in a county records room that smelled like dust in 1970, there was a drawer. In that drawer was a will. Stapled behind that will was a sealed envelope that had been waiting 9 years. It had one typed line on its face, and my father wrote that line the winter before he died, for exactly this day. The man had been gone almost a decade. He was about to speak anyway. But let me back up a little. 4 days earlier, Tuesday, February 10th, 9:40 at night. The C-17 touched down heavy and honest. 3 weeks, 4 continents, 11 legs. I signed the forms, walked the flight line, and drove home with the windows cracked because I wanted to smell my own state. There is a ritual to coming home. Every military spouse reading this knows their version of it. Mine goes, helmet bag on the peg, boots by the dryer, 1 long shower, and then find the child and stand there breathing while she sleeps, converting 3 weeks of missing her into 1 quiet minute of being back. It is the best minute the job sells. Nobody tells you it can be counterfeited, that a house can hold still for that minute and already be halfway out the door. I want to be fair to that drive. I was happy. Tired in the bones, but happy. Ella was asleep when I came in. I stood in her doorway a long minute, 6 years old that Saturday. Her birthday banner was already up in the hall, crooked, and I loved it for being crooked. Derek hugged me at the kitchen island. 1 arm. Long one this time, he said. Longest this year. There's food in the fridge. Sienna dropped off a casserole. Who's Sienna? The stager. Work friend. She's been helping me get the house in shape. In shape for what? I did not ask. I was too tired to be smart. But a house talks if you listen. And mine had a new accent. New throw pillows, tags still on. The good photos of us moved from the mantel to a drawer, a candle that smelled like a rental. My mug, the chipped one from my first squadron, was gone from the cabinet and sitting in a donation box in the garage. In the trash under the sink, a paint sample card, a shade called Harbor Fog, circled. We do not have a room that color. We do not have a room that could be that color. I stood in my own kitchen holding a paint card for a wall I had never seen, and a small cold spot formed under my sternum. 3 weeks gone. I had crossed 4 continents. The strangest country was my own living room. Wednesday and Thursday were fine. That is the true and boring answer. School, runs, a dentist form. Ella and I made pancakes, and she told me about a boy named Marcus who could burp the alphabet. I braided her hair. I slept next to my husband and did not know I was sleeping next to a countdown. Thursday night, I read Ella the airplane book. She knows it by heart. She corrects me if I skip. Mommy, you missed the part where the little plane is scared. I would never skip the scared part. The scared part is the whole point. Why? Because the little plane flies anyway. That's the story. Derek stood in the hall a moment listening. When I came out, he was already walking away, and he said, without turning around, You're good at that. It did not sound like a compliment. It sounded like a man measuring something. I know the difference now. I did not know it then. Friday night, we blew up balloons for the party, 20 of them. Derek was on his phone by the window, typing, deleting, typing. Big group tomorrow, I asked. Bigger than you think, he said, and did not look up. Ella fell asleep on the couch between us, party hat still on. Daddy said the party has a surprise at the end, she murmured, half dreaming. I kissed her hair. I love surprises, I said. God forgive me, I said I loved surprises. Saturday, February 14th, her birthday, and yes, Valentine's Day. She thought the whole world got hearts because of her. We let her think it. The party was good for 1 hour and 40 minutes. I know because I checked my watch when the doorbell rang the first time, a habit I cannot turn off, and I checked it again when my marriage ended. 26 guests, 6 kids from her class, neighbors, 2 of Derek's cousins. His work people came late, which I thought was strange for a child's party, until I understood they were not there for the child. Sienna arrived with the cake, professional from the good bakery. She carried it through my front door like a woman who knew where the outlets were. You must be Lena, she said. I've heard everything about you. Wish I could say the same. She smiled with her teeth and went to the kitchen. My kitchen, games, presents, the crayon airplane card, which I put on the mantel where our photos used to be. Then the glasses came out, and Derek tapped his. And you already know this part. The folder, the speech, the deal. Let me tell you the parts I skipped. When he said the words, a real mom, a neighbor woman put her hand over her mouth. One of his cousins looked at the grass. A 6-year-old asked her mother, too loud, What's happening? And her mother said, Shh, baby. Grown-up stuff, and started packing their bag. When he said, keep your pension, I watched his lawyer's phrasing come out of my husband's mouth. Derek does not talk like that. Derek talks about rates and points and closing costs. Somebody had written that sentence for him, and he had rehearsed it into the mirror I bought. And when he said, and go, his voice dropped at the end. Soft, almost kind. That was the practice part. That was the part that told me none of this was impulse. This was a closing. I had watched him close for years. You lower your voice at the end. People sign when the voice is low. You have until Monday. My lawyer says it is generous. The guests drained out of my backyard like water out of a cracked bowl. Mumbled thank yous. Goodie bags abandoned on the fence posts. One mother squeezed my forearm on her way out and whispered, I saw nothing wrong with you, which is the kind of sentence that means everything and helps nothing. Sienna packed the cake stand. Her cake stand, apparently. She wound plastic wrap around the leftover cake with quick, practiced turns and set 2 slices on a plate and put the plate in my refrigerator, and I stood there watching a stranger arrange Mercy in my kitchen. For Ella's lunch tomorrow, she said, she likes the corner pieces. She said it kindly. That was the worst part. She had learned my daughter's favorite pieces of cake in whatever number of months this had been growing under my wing, and she said it the way you talk to someone standing in a house you have already measured for curtains. Get out of my kitchen, I said. Level. Quiet. The only order I gave all day. She looked at Derek. Not at me, at Derek, for a ruling. And that told me the chain of command in my own home better than any folder could. They left together to load folding chairs into his truck. Through the window, I watched my husband laugh at something she said on my daughter's birthday, 40 minutes after ending our marriage in front of the neighborhood, and I understood that whatever this was, it had been rehearsed longer than the speech. I did not cry. I want that on the record. Not because crying is weak, because I had a job to do, and the Air Force taught me the order of operations. First you fly the airplane, then you navigate, then you communicate. Feelings are the passenger, not the pilot. I took Ella inside for her bath. I sang the duck song. I tucked her in at 7:50 with her new stuffed rabbit. Best birthday ever, she said, already going under. Except the boring speech. The boring speech was my least favorite too, I said. Then I went down to the laundry room, locked the door, set the blue folder on the dryer, and photographed every page with my phone. Both sides, flat and square, no shadows, the way you photograph a bent panel or a bird strike. Evidence habits are portable. Here's what the folder said. In plain words, a consent order. I agree Derek becomes the primary parent. I agree the house is his. I get alternating weekends when my schedule allows, which is lawyer for never. In exchange, nobody touches my military pension, and both parties bear their own fees. A yellow sticky arrow pointed where I would sign. There was a pen clipped inside the folder. He had provided the pen. Attached in the back, a printed calendar of the last 2 years with every one of my trips highlighted in orange. 181 nights one year, 168 the next. Somebody had gone through my duty history like an accountant and turned my service into a prosecution exhibit. There was also a voicemail on my phone by then. A man named Chad Wexler, Esquire, smooth as a radio ad. Captain, this can be simple. Everyone walks away whole. Call me by Monday. Everyone walks away whole. He meant everyone walks away with a whole house. Because here's the tell I could not stop staring at. That night on the dryer, with the machines off and the house too quiet. The folder spent 1 paragraph on my daughter's bedtime and 4 pages on the property. Whoever built this deal was not hungry for Ella. They were hungry for the house. I did not know why yet. I just wrote it in my notes app, time-stamped, the way I log a caution light. They want the house more than they want her. Find out why. Derek was in the doorway when I came out. Sleeves rolled, voice low again. Don't make this ugly, Lena. You're gone half the year. Any judge can do that math. You gave my daughter's birthday a closing date, I said. It's already ugly. Good night. I slept in the guest room. Above me, glow stars Ella and I had stuck to that ceiling one summer because she wanted the guest room to feel less lonely for guests. I lay there under a fake sky and counted what was missing. A mug, some photos, a paint color we did not own, $63,000, though I did not know that number yet, and one man who had been dead for 9 years, who it turned out was not done being my father. Monday morning, I did not call Chad Wexler. I called the base legal assistance office at 7:30 and took the first slot they had. Captain Isla Fontaine, younger than me, glasses, a handshake like a checklist. Her office had a plant that was thriving, which for some reason I trusted. She read the folder twice without a single change in her face. Then she set it down and squared the corners. First, sign nothing, not a birthday card, nothing. Understood. Second, this consent order is aggressive, but it is dressed politely, which means a competent lawyer built it and told your husband to smile while delivering it. You need civilian counsel today, not this week. I can advise, I cannot represent you in state court. Give me a name. Vivian Reyes. She used to prosecute financial fraud. Family law now. Judges read her briefs twice. Fontaine slid a card across the desk. Then she looked at me over her glasses. Captain, one more thing. You fly the plane. Let the paperwork fly for you this time. People like your husband win when the other side gets emotional and signs to make the shame stop. I don't sign to make things stop, I said. I document. Then you're going to be fine. Vivian Reyes saw me at 4. Her office was 2 blocks from the courthouse, all files and no art. She read the folder once, slower than Fontaine, making small dots in the margin with a pencil. Tell me about the house, she said first. Not the custody, the house. You see it too. A father who wanted your daughter would trade money for time. This offer trades time for money, so she pulled a legal pad closer. We answer the petition, we decline their Monday, and we pull every financial record with your name on it. Today, mortgages love paper. Paper loves me. We signed engagement letters and subpoena authorizations. She ordered statements from the mortgage servicer, the bank, the county recorder. It felt like pre-flight. It felt for the first time in 3 days like lift. The first records came back Thursday by portal. Reyes called me in Friday morning and turned her monitor around without saying hello. Did you and your husband modify your home equity line last August? No. We opened one 4 years ago for the roof. $11,000. We paid most of it down. The line was modified on August 12th, 2025. Credit limit raised to $90,000. The modification paperwork says both borrowers appeared and signed. She scrolled. Then in September there are draws. $9,000, then $22,000, then $32,000, $63,000 total, wired out within 30 days. The room went small and very clear. My heart stopped, then remembered its job. Where was I on August 12th? I said. It was not a question to her. It was a question to my logbook, and I already knew the answer. You tell me. Over the Atlantic, mid-rotation, I left on August 3rd and came home on the 29th. There are custom stamps, there are orders, there is a jet with my name on the forms. Reyes sat back and looked at me the way a surgeon looks at a clean x-ray of a bad break. Bad news, good picture. Captain Ashford, she said. Somebody signed you in person while you were on another continent. That is not a marital dispute. That is forgery. Evidence. Real evidence. She started a preservation letter to the bank before I had my coat on. That night I went through my deployment binder. Every military family has one. The binder, the just-in-case binder, powers of attorney, the will, insurance, Ella's shot records. And in the back pocket, where it had lived for 9 years because I could not throw it away and could not look at it either, a condolence card with a law firm's return address, Ashford and Bergman, attorneys at law. My father's little two-man firm, from the town where I grew up. Saul Bergman had signed it in fountain pen back in 2017. Under the printed sympathy verse, he had written one line of his own. If anything ever feels wrong, call me first. Your father asked me that. I had read that line at 24, drowning in grief and a new marriage, and thought it was an old man being formal. I read it now, at 34, sitting on a guest bed under fake stars, and heard it for what it was. A tripwire, left by a man who wrote documents for a living and never wasted a word. It was 9:20 at night. I called anyway. He answered on the second ring, voice like dry paper and completely awake. Bergman. Mr. Bergman, it's Lena, Arthur's daughter. Silence. One long breath of it. I'm sorry to call so late. Something is wrong. Tell me, he said. So I told him. The party, the folder, the 63,000. Monday. When I finished, the old man was quiet for so long, I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. Captain, he said at last, and his voice had changed. It had Court in it now. Before you sign anything at all, hear me. Your father left instructions. The hair stood up on my arms. What instructions? He's been gone 9 years. He filed them the winter before he died, Saul Bergman said. With the county, sealed. He told me, Saul, you will know the day, and I believe your husband just picked it. I stood up without deciding to. 9 years of guest rooms and grief, and my heart was going like a run-up check. What do the instructions say, Saul? I do not know. You were his partner. I was his partner, which is why I do not know. He sealed it, he filed it, and he made me witness the envelope, not the contents. He said, if Saul can be deposed about it, Saul should not know it. A dry sound, half laugh, half grief. 40 years, and he never once trusted a memory where a filing stamp would do. Then what do I do? Tomorrow you tell your lawyer these words. Ashford Family Trust, County Probate, 2017. She will know how to ask for the rest. And Lena. The court went out of his voice, and what was left was just an old man who had buried his best friend. He was not silent those last years because of you. He was silent because of what he was building. There is a difference, and it matters, and I have waited 9 years to be allowed to say so. I did not sleep that night. For the first time since the party, it was not the anger keeping me up. It was something with wings. Here's what I learned about my father in the weeks that followed, and what you need to know about him now. Arthur Ashford spent 28 years in the Army as a JAG officer, a military lawyer. He retired a full colonel and came home to a town of 9,000 people, hung a wooden sign, and spent the rest of his life writing wills for farmers and teachers, estates, trusts, the paperwork of love and death. People called him formal. He called it precise. He used to tell me the same thing every time I rolled my eyes at his careful sentences. Lena, people lie, documents don't. Put it in writing and file it with the county. I did not roll my eyes anymore. We had one fight that mattered. My father and I. June 2016. I brought Derek home. Dad was polite at dinner and then asked to see me alone on the porch. And on that porch, he handed me a draft prenuptial agreement he had written himself. I was 24 and in love. I said Derek was not a business deal. He said everything becomes a business deal the day it goes wrong, and the paper is for that day, not this one. I said some things I will not repeat, because I was cruel the way only a daughter can be. He stood there in the porch light and took it. Derek told me later the prenup was an insult to us both. I chose my husband's feelings over my father's caution. Dad came to the wedding that September. He sat in the back. We spoke for 2 minutes by the coat check. In October, he called me twice. I let both go to voicemail because I was still angry and I thought there would be time. In January, he died in his office chair with a client's folder open on the desk. Heart. He was 65. You carry a thing like that. You fly with it. It rides jump seat for 9 years. The estate back then looked simple. The little house sold. The firm's clients went to Saul. There was a modest trust, Saul said, dispersals when appropriate, taxes handled, nothing for me to do. I was grieving and pregnant with my career, and I signed where the arrows pointed and thanked him. In 2019, when Derek and I bought the house, $180,000 arrived for the down payment. From the estate, from the trust, from Dad, said the wire memo, said Saul, said everyone. A dead man buying his daughter a home. I cried in the title office and signed a stack of documents an inch thick. Somewhere in that inch, it turns out, was a page that mattered more than all the others. I did not read it properly. Derek never read it at all. Hold that thought. The court will read it for us. The temporary orders hearing came first, March 10th. And I want to be honest with you about that day, because this part of the story is not a victory. Family court, third floor, a Tuesday, Judge Marguerite Bell, silver reading glasses, a docket like a freight train. Wexler stood up sleek as a seal and said the words stability and status quo 11 times. I counted. The child is settled in the marital home. The mother's schedule is, and I quote, heroic but hostile to routine. Nobody was attacking my service, he said, while attacking my service. He called me to the stand and was very polite, which is how lawyers hold the knife. Captain Ashford, how many nights were you away from home last year? 168. And the year before, 181. You keep precise count. The Air Force keeps precise count. I fly what I'm ordered to fly. Of course, and when you are, say, over the Atlantic, who takes your daughter to school? Her father, or before this year, the sitter we hired together. So on those mornings, you would agree another person is doing the mothering, Reyes objected. Sustained. But the sentence was already out of the box, and it sat there in the middle of that courtroom doing its quiet work on everyone who heard it. No further questions. I looked at the judge on my way down. I said one thing, level as I could make it. Your Honor, I count the nights too. Nobody has to keep that number for me. Judge Bell wrote something. Wexler smiled at his legal pad. Rounds to him, Reyes fought. But temporary hearings run on surfaces, and the surface was his. Judge Bell ordered the child to remain in the marital home on school nights, with Derek. I got alternating weekends, and every Wednesday, plus, the order said, such additional time as duty schedules permit. She said it was temporary. She said it twice, which I later learned was her way of telling me she saw something she could not yet reach. I moved into a rented duplex with a yard the size of a parking space. Wednesday nights, Ella and I made pancakes for dinner, and I braided her hair and drove her back to a house I still paid for, and stood in the driveway while the porch light went off. Wexler smiled at me in the corridor that day, on the way out. Not cruel, confident, a man ahead on points. It can still be simple, Captain, he said. So can I said, and walked past him. Low point, marked on the chart, now the climb. Because while the custody file was losing, the money file was catching fire. Reyes' subpoenas came back in waves that month, and we stood at her whiteboard on a Thursday night and drew the shape of my husband's second life in dry erase marker. The $63,000 from the forged line went by wire to a title company 200 miles north, Blue Hollow, Lake Country. The wire referenced a purchase contract on a 3-bedroom cabin with a dock, sale pending, deposit $58,500. The buyer on the contract was not Derek. The buyer was S. Brandt, Sienna Brandt, the cake carrier, the stager. Her company, S. Brandt Interiors, had also invoiced $12,400 for, and I'm reading the invoice, full interior styling, lake property. Paid from our joint, checking in 3 payments my husband labeled consulting. And on page 4 of the styling scope, a line item that took my legs for a second. I sat down in Reyes' client chair and read it 3 times. Children's bedroom, full design, theme, airplanes. 200 miles away, in a house I had never seen, bought with money stolen against my name, a room had been decorated for my daughter. Airplanes. She wanted airplanes because of me. They were not stealing a house from me. They were stealing a life. Furnished, staged, move-in ready, my equity, my kid, my theme. Now we know why the folder wanted the house, Reyes said quietly. He needs the equity out of this one to close on that one. The custody demand is the crowbar. I looked at the whiteboard until the marker line stopped swimming. Then let's take away the crowbar, I said. Reyes capped the marker and looked at me for a long moment, lawyer arithmetic running behind her eyes. "There is one thing this board cannot explain," she said. "The timing. He needed your equity. Fine. But he moved $63,000 in September and sat on the custody petition until February. 5 months. Why wait? Why do it at a birthday party, with witnesses, with cake? Cruelty that public is not strategy. It is theater. Somebody wanted an audience." "He is a closer," I said. "Closers stage things." "Maybe." She did not sound convinced, and she was right not to be. We never did get a clean answer to that one, unless you count what Sienna told a mutual acquaintance later, that the party was supposed to make me sign fast and quiet, out of shame, in front of the whole street. If that was the theory, then let the record reflect that shame and I have met exactly twice, and both times it was wearing someone else's face. The break came from a records room. April 7th, County Probate Office, 2 towns over, the town where I grew up. A deputy clerk named Bonnie Adler, 55 years old, 29 years in that office, pulled the Ashford estate file to answer Reyes's trust subpoena. She would tell me later she remembered my father. He used to bring the office donuts every filing day, she said. "Called it bribing the referee," she said. That was him. The 2019 trust distribution was in the file, right where it should be. But when Bonnie Adler lifted the will to copy it, she found an envelope stapled behind it. Heavy paper, sealed with tape gone amber at the edges. Across the face, 1 typed line and a filing stamp from January 2017. To be opened only upon any petition concerning the custody or residence of a child of my daughter. She read that line, she told me later, and got up and closed her office door. Then she called the family court directly. Reyes got the notice that afternoon and called me at the squadron. I stepped out of a briefing to take it. "The county has a sealed instrument connected to your father's estate," she said. Her voice had a strange formality in it, like she was reading from something. "It self-triggers on a custody petition involving your child. Lena, it has been sitting there for 9 years. It is dated 11 days before he died. I stood in a hallway full of flight suits and could not speak. 9 years. I had let his calls go to voicemail. I had buried him angry, and 11 days before his heart quit, my father had been at the county recorder with a stapler, building me a shelter for a storm he would never see, on the exact assumption that someday someone would come for his granddaughter or her home." "Lena?" "When does it open?" I said. "April 21st, in court. The judge opens it. That's how he filed it." Of course it was. People lie. Documents don't. Put it in writing and file it with the county. April 21st. Judge Bell's courtroom again, but the air was different and everyone could feel it. Wexler had filed 2 motions trying to keep the envelope out. "Irrelevant," he wrote. "Prejudicial. Fishing expedition." Judge Bell denied both from the bench in under a minute, which told me she had done her homework on the filing stamp. Then the doors opened, and Saul Bergman came up the aisle, 71 years old, a gray suit that had outlived several presidents, a briefcase with a buckle, an actual buckle. He moved slow and sat straight, and when he announced himself as counsel for the Ashford Family Trust, his voice filled the room from the floor up. Derek leaned to Wexler and whispered. Wexler did not whisper back. Wexler was looking at the buckle briefcase like a man doing math with missing numbers. The clerk brought the envelope forward on a folder, like something served. Judge Bell examined the seal, read the face line aloud for the record, and confirmed the January 2017 stamp with the probate certification. "The condition on the face of this instrument has been met," she said. "A petition concerning the custody and residence of the minor child is before this court. I am opening it." "Mr. Bergman," Judge Bell said, "you witnessed this filing." "I witnessed the envelope, Your Honor. January of 2017. I drove Colonel Ashford to the recorder's office myself. It was 11 degrees and he wore his good coat. He carried that envelope like it was a folded flag." "And you have no knowledge of its contents?" "By his design, none. He said the county would keep it honest and the condition would keep it patient." "Objection," Wexler tried, one last time. "Foundation, hearsay, relevance." Overruled, and counsel," Judge Bell looked at him over the silver glasses. "A 9-year-old sealed instrument that names the exact posture of your client's petition is many things, but irrelevant is not on the list. The court will open it." The paper knife sounded very loud. 3 envelopes inside and an index page. My father indexed his last letter. "If you knew him, you are smiling. Envelope 1, marked for the court." Judge Bell read it silently first, all of it, and I watched her eyebrows do something judges train out of themselves. The first enclosure, she said, is a certified copy of a declaration of trust, the Ashford Family Trust, executed 2016. It is accompanied by a recorded deed of trust against the marital residence, recorded April 2019, county land records, instrument number, read into the record. Wexler stood. Your Honor, we have never seen any of this. That may be the most honest thing said in this courtroom today, counsel. Sit down. Here's what the document said, in plain words, because plain words are what my father believed in. The $180,000 was never a gift. It was a loan. From the trust. To me and to Derek, jointly and severally, secured by a recorded lien against the house, interest accruing quietly at the legal minimum, no payments due while, and this is the phrase, the home shelters my daughter and any child of hers. And one more clause, the one Bergman later told me my father drafted first, before anything else, the winter he wrote it. If any party ever attempted, by petition or by pressure, to remove me or my child from the home, the entire balance, principal, and 9 years of interest became due and payable to the trust immediately. The equity, Derek was counting. The equity the whole blue folder was built to crowbar loose. It did not exist. It had never existed. The house's value belonged, first dollar to last, to a trust whose beneficiaries were me and Ella, administered by one Saul Bergman, and my father had set it up that way when I was 24 years old and too angry to speak to him, without ever telling me, so that my marriage could be a marriage and not a siege. He protected me and let me hate the paperwork. He took that trade silently and carried it to his grave. The courtroom did that thing rooms do, not noise, pressure, every person recalculating at once. Wexler's paralegal stopped typing. One of Derek's cousins, the one who had looked at the grass at the party, put his phone away slowly, like a man at a funeral, realizing whose it is. At the back, Bonnie Adler from probate, who had asked permission to attend, sat with her hands folded and her chin up, the way you sit when your office just mattered. Counsel, approach, Judge Bell said. Now. I did not watch the lawyers. I watched my husband. I watched Derek read the recorded lien over Wexler's shoulder, watched his lips move on the words due and payable, watched a man who moved money for a living understand, in real time, in public, at the pace of his own reading speed, that he had spent 2 years building a heist for a vault that was empty and had forged my name to do it. He looked at me. I looked back. I did not smile. It was not hard. I had a father to be worthy of. There were 2 more envelopes on the clerk's folder, one marked, for the court, if character is at issue, which Judge Bell set aside, unopened, against a later stage of these proceedings, and one, smaller, in fountain pen, not typed, one word on it, Lena. The judge had the clerk hand it to me sealed. This one, she said, and for a moment she was not a judge, is not evidence. I put it in the inside pocket of my service dress coat, over the wings, and I did not open it. Not yet. If you have ever had one last unheard voicemail from someone you understand, as long as it was sealed, my father still had one thing left to say to me. Outside, in the corridor, Saul Bergman shook my hand with both of his. He filed it the winter before he died, he said. He told me, she will be angry at me a while longer, Saul, and that is all right. Anger rents. Love owns the ground. He was very pleased with that one, repeated it twice. Why didn't you tell me, I said. 9 years, Saul. Because you did not need it yet, he said simply. A shelter you are living in is a home. A shelter you are shown during good weather is an accusation. He knew the difference. He asked me to know it too. That evening, Reyes spread the trust documents across her conference table and walked me through what my father had actually built, and I want to walk you through it too, because the beauty is in the plumbing. The lien was recorded in April 2019, she said. Public record. Anyone who searched the title would find it. Your husband works in mortgages, and he never searched his own house because the down payment came dressed as a gift and nobody audits a gift. She tapped the acceleration clause. And this is the part I would frame. The loan calls automatically on any petition against your or Ella's residence, not on divorce. Your father did not care if the marriage ended. Marriages end. It triggers on someone trying to take the home, which means the moment Derek filed, his own petition detonated the equity he filed it to get. He pulled the pin himself, in writing, with a filing fee. So, the blue folder at the party was an offer to trade your daughter for money that stopped existing the moment he asked for it. She sat back. 9 years ahead, Lena. Your father saw this man coming 9 years ahead in an era when everyone else was toasting the groom. I thought about the porch, the draft prenup in his careful hand. 24-year-old me spitting the word insulting. He never said I told you so. He built 40 pages of it instead and dated it and paid the recording fee and died without mentioning it once. After the 21st, the case stopped being a custody fight with a money problem and became a fraud case with a custody question, and those are different animals with different appetites. The forgery fell first. The bank's own audit file arrived under subpoena in the first week of May. The August 12th modification had been notarized in person, according to its own certificate, by a notary named Kurt Dempsey, who was, the state commission database showed, a licensed notary, and also the bank's employee directory showed, a loan officer at my husband's brokerage, 2 desks down. The certificate said I personally appeared before him on August 12th, 2025, at 4:15 in the afternoon, and presented identification. Reyes laid the exhibit side by side on her conference table like a dealer showing a hand. Exhibit 1, the notarization. Exhibit 2, my certified orders for the August rotation, 3rd through the 29th. Exhibit 3, the aircraft movement record with my name on the crew manifest, showing me on the ground at a base I will just call very far away, on the 12th, loading patients onto my jet. Exhibit 4, my passport stamps. He notarized a ghost, Reyes said. Your passport is better evidence than his witness. When the DA's office sees this, and they will, Mr. Dempsey is going to have a strong incentive to describe exactly who handed him that document and asked for a favor. Mr. Dempsey apparently reached the same conclusion. By mid-May, he had retained his own counsel and stopped returning Derek's calls, which we knew because Derek's texts about it were now discoverable, and I will quote only one because it is enough. Kay won't pick up. If he flips this, all lands on me. Underline that in your mind. If he flips, this all lands on me. Prosecutors call that a statement against interest. My father would have called it a confession with a return address. The bank sent an investigator, a polite woman with a federal habit of writing down the time every few minutes. She interviewed me for 2 hours. Somewhere in the second hour, she stopped being neutral, which investigators will deny they ever do, and slid a copy of the August modification across the table. For the record, Captain, is this your signature? It is a good copy of my signature. My signature was over the Atlantic that day. One more for the record? She almost smiled. In 14 years of doing this, the file where the forged borrower can produce military orders, a crew manifest, and a custom stamp for the exact date of the fraud is a first. Usually we have to work for the timeline. Happy to serve, I said, and she laughed, wrote down the time, and closed the folder. The bank, staring at a forged notarization on its own paper, voided the modification, froze the line, and filed its own referral. The Blue Hollow closing, starved of the equity it was drinking, collapsed on the 20th of May. The $58,500 deposit was forfeited per contract. Gone. Sienna Brandt's styling invoices stopped arriving. So, the neighbors mentioned, did Sienna. The airplane's bedroom, 200 miles away, would stay a showroom. My daughter would never see it. Small mercies land quietly, but they land. The last Friday of May, at 9 at night, Derek came to the duplex. I watched him park crooked and sit in the car for a full minute. Then he came up the walk, and I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me because my daughter was asleep and this was not going to happen indoors. 5 minutes, he said. No lawyers, just us. You have 4. He had a speech. He always has a speech. This one was softer, sanded down. He said things had gotten away from him. He said the cabin was never what it looked like. He said, and I want you to hear the architecture of this sentence. I was going to tell you about the equity once it was all working. Once it was all working. You know what I mean. I do. That is the problem. I kept my voice at briefing level. You want to tell me why the notary 2 desks down remembers me signing papers in August, Derek? I was flying over the ocean. I have the stamps. Silence. A porch moth ticking against the light. His jaw worked through drafts of sentences and threw them all away. If the DA thing goes forward, he said finally, it ruins me. Licenses, everything, is that what you want? Drop it and I will walk away from all of it. The house, everything, clean. There it was. The last offer of a man who had opened with an offer at a birthday party. I looked at him and mostly what I felt was tired, and underneath the tired level ground. You still think this is a negotiation, I said. It stopped being one on August 12th. I did not file that referral. Your paperwork did. My father taught me that documents outrun explanations, and you wrote a lot of documents, Derek. Your father. He laughed once without anything in it. 9 years dead, and he is still in the room. He was always in the room, I said. You just never learned what he kept in writing. 4 minutes are up. Good night. I went inside and locked the door, and stood in the dark hallway, and breathed. For the record, because my lawyer will read this too. Yes, the porch light has a camera. Yes, it was on. He knew it was there. He kept talking anyway. Wexler would later fight to keep that recording out and lose, which by that point in the story felt almost routine. And the custody surface, the one that had beaten me in March, was resurveyed with honest instruments. The guardian ad litem's report went through Ella's actual records. The school sign-in sheets. Every reading night I was stateside. My signature, 7:15 in the morning next to hers. The pediatric portal. Appointments booked from time zones 11 hours away. At 3 in the morning my time. The recital Wexler's orange calendar said I missed. The video call log from the school's own tablet, 40 minutes. My face in a crew rest facility, watching my daughter be a snowflake. My commander, Lieutenant Colonel Rhea Stanton, signed a certified letter that I did not read until weeks later, because she handed it to me sealed and said only, "Do not get shot down by paperwork, Ashford. It would embarrass the wing." The letter, when I did read it, described my duty performance, my deployment tempo, and ended with a sentence I intend to be buried remembering. This officer has never once been late for the mission. The record will show she was never once late for her daughter either. The Air Force checked. On June 3rd, Judge Bell modified the temporary order. Primary residence with me, effective immediately, pending final hearing. I picked Ella up from school that afternoon in the old car with the squadron sticker. She climbed into her booster seat like it was any Tuesday. Are we going to your little house, Mommy? Our little house, baby. For keeps now. Can we make pancakes even though it's not Wednesday? We made pancakes even though it was not Wednesday. She wanted chocolate chips arranged as a smiley face, and then she wanted to do mine, and hers had 17 teeth. And we agreed that was the correct number for a pancake that happy. While she ate, she told me the fridge at Daddy's house had lost the countdown paper, the one we always kept, the one that said, "How many sleeps until Mommy lands?" It had come down sometime in the spring, she said, and nobody put it back up. We'll make a new one, I said, except now it can just say 0. Forever 0? Until the Air Force says otherwise. Then we count again, and I always land. She nodded, businesslike, 6 years old, and ate the smiley face teeth first, which is the kind of ruthless this family approves of. She fell asleep at 7:50, holding the crayon airplane card, which lives on our mantel now, and I stood in her doorway the way I had stood 1,000 doorways. And for the first time since February, the watch on my wrist was just a watch, and not a countdown. The final hearing came on June 26th, consolidated. Custody, property, everything on one calendar, because Judge Bell, I came to understand, preferred to fix a thing once and completely, like a good crew chief. It lasted 4 hours. It was over in the first 10 minutes. Both things are true. It was over in the first 10 minutes because Wexler stood up before testimony and withdrew every property claim. All of them. The house, the equity offsets, the demand that my share of appreciated value fund the settlement. Withdrawn. A lawyer stepping backward out of a minefield he had personally marketed as a meadow. Very well, Judge Bell said, writing. The court notes the respondent no longer seeks the marital residence he scheduled a birthday party to acquire. I told you she had been doing her homework. The custody testimony ran clean and almost gentle. The guardian ad litem, the school records, the commander's letter. Wexler's cross-examination of me lasted 6 minutes and landed nothing because he had built his whole case on an orange calendar, and the orange calendar was now an exhibit against his client. And every question about my absences invited an answer about video calls at 3 in the morning, and he knew it, and he sat down. The guardian ad litem went through her report without theater, school records, sign-in sheets, the 3 in the morning appointment logs. At the end, Judge Bell asked her one question. In your interviews with the child, how does she describe her mother's absences? She said, quote, "My mommy flies help to people and then she comes back. She keeps a countdown paper on the fridge. She was not describing a missing parent, Your Honor. She was describing a schedule she trusts." Wexler's cross of me lasted 6 minutes, and here is the whole usable part. Captain, you concede you will deploy again? I serve at the needs of the Air Force, yes. So nothing has actually changed since March. Everything has changed since March. In March, you had a calendar with my absences highlighted. Now the court has the sign-in sheets for the mornings I was present, the call logs for the nights I was not, and an explanation for why you needed that calendar in the first place. The house, which your client no longer claims. Move to strike everything after, yes, Your Honor. Denied, Judge Bell said mildly. You asked her what had changed, counsel. She answered. He sat down. Derek testified last. He said the words, I only ever wanted what was best for Ella 4 times. On the 4th, I watched Judge Bell write a single short note, and I would have paid 1 month flight pay to read it. And then the second envelope. There remains, Judge Bell said, a sealed enclosure filed by the late Colonel Ashford, marked for the court in the event character, became an issue in these proceedings. The respondent has placed the petitioner's character, her fitness, and her family's motives squarely at issue. The court finds the condition met. Wexler objected on grounds I honestly do not remember because I was watching my husband, who had gone the color of unpainted drywall, because he, unlike his lawyer, seemed to already know what a man like my father would have kept. Objection overruled. Seal broken. And Judge Marguerite Bell read into the record a letter dated November 9, 2016, handwritten, 2 pages. She read it in a flat, procedural voice, which was somehow the loudest possible way to read it. My husband had written it to my father 6 weeks after our wedding. I will give you the shape and the sentence. The shape was money. Congratulations on the wedding, an acknowledgement that the two of them had, quote, gotten off on the wrong foot over the prenup insult, and then 3 paragraphs of what Derek called opportunity. He was building his book of business. A man in my father's position, with my father's assets, could help his new son-in-law get established. $100,000 was named. Structured as Derek saw fit, gift or investment, he was flexible. And then the sentence. The judge paused half a beat before it, the only human crack in her voice all day, and read it exactly as written. If you want to stay in your daughter's life, it would be wise to invest in ours. The courtroom did not gasp. It was quieter than that. It was the sound of a scale finally agreeing with itself. 9 years I had wondered why my father went from cool to gone that autumn, why the calls stopped being answered with calls. I had spent 9 years believing my father chose distance because of a fight about paperwork, and grieving him with an asterisk. And the truth was he had been standing between me and this exact man the entire time, holding the door shut with both hands, saying nothing because telling me would have broken me against my own marriage. He answered that letter, by the way. Bergman had the copy in the trust file, 1 sentence typed. Derek, my daughter is not an asset class. A. Then he drove to the county and started building the trust. Judge Bell took 20 minutes in chambers and came back and ruled from the bench. And I will give it to you the way I keep it. Folded. Small. Primary, legal, and physical custody of Ella to me. Visitation for Derek, supervised for the first 90 days, stepping up to standard alternating weekends contingent on completion of a financial accountability program, and, the order said, sustained honesty in matters concerning the child. The trust's lien, confirmed valid in full. The loan, called by its own terms, the day Derek filed his petition, meant the house's equity answered to the trust, and the trust answered to Bergman, and Bergman moved that the trust settle by taking title and granting me and Ella a life tenancy at $1 per year. Granted. The $63,000 from the forged line, plus the $12,400 in consulting entered as a judgment against Derek, offset against any remaining marital claims, which zeroed them, with a balance he will be paying by garnishment into Ella's college account until she's well into her 20s. There is a symmetry there I did not design and will not pretend to regret. Before she adjourned us, Judge Bell took off the silver glasses, which I had learned by then was her signal that the next sentence would be off script. Mr. Holloway, the court sees a great many people at their worst, and it tries to remember that a file is not a whole man, so the court will say this plainly. Your daughter has one parent who documents her love, and one parent who documented everything else. The order I have entered gives you time to become worth documenting. The court genuinely hopes you use it. Derek looked at the table. Wexler looked at his watch. I looked at the flag in the corner and thought about a man in a good coat, 11 degrees, carrying an envelope like a folded flag. The forged notarization went to the district attorney by formal referral. I was asked on the record if I wished to be heard on that. I stood up in my service dress, and I felt the envelope in my inside pocket over the wings, and I said the only thing I had ever wanted to say in that building. Your Honor, this was never about winning. It was about who tells my daughter the truth. The court can handle the rest. We were adjourned by 3. In the corridor, Derek stood alone by the elevators. No Wexler, no Sienna. Sienna, I would learn, had been gone since the deposit died, staging a builder's model homes upstate, which is the most honest work she ever did in this story, decorating empty houses that pretend to be homes. Lena, he said it quietly. I didn't know he kept it. The letter. 9 years of voicemails I never returned because of a wall this man built and painted to look like my father's coldness. He kept everything that mattered, I said. That was the difference between you. I took the stairs. The cemetery in my hometown sits on a low hill behind the Methodist church, under oaks that were old when my father was a boy there. 2 counties over, 2 hours with the windows cracked. I went on a Saturday in June. Ella came. I did not plan to bring her, and then I could not think of one true reason not to. His stone is exactly him. Name, years, and 1 line. No verse. Arthur Ashford. Colonel, United States Army. Put it in writing. I am not joking. He chose it himself, prepaid, filed the receipt. The stonemason told Saul he had never had a customer proof a headstone twice. Ella picked dandelions 10 feet away and narrated to them softly, the way she does. I sat down on the grass in the shade, and I took the small envelope out of my pocket, the one with 1 word on it, in fountain pen, and I opened the last thing my father ever said to me. I will not give you all of it. Some pages you earn by burying someone angry, but I will give you what I can, because he would want the useful parts in the record. He wrote it 11 days before he died. He knew his heart was bad. He had not told me that either. He wrote that he was wrong on the porch, not about the paper. He was right about the paper, and he knew I knew that now, and he permitted himself, in writing, 1 small, told you so, sized appropriately, his words, sized appropriately. He was wrong, he wrote, to make a 24-year-old choose between her judgment and her father on the strength of a document. A trust does not need to be announced to be real, he wrote, so I am building one that will not shout. This is true of trusts and of fathers. He wrote that he had watched the promotion list every cycle, that he kept a clipping from the base paper, me by the jet after my first check ride, in the top drawer of his desk at the firm. Saul confirms it stayed there until the office closed, and it is framed in my hallway now, next to a crayon airplane. And near the end, the paragraph I keep over the wings, and read before every hearing of my life since, and will read to Ella when she is old enough to bury someone angry so that she never does. If this letter is ever opened, it means someone tried to take what you built. Do not spend 1 hour becoming what they are. You were trained by better institutions than anger, 2 of them, and I had the honor of being the first. Stand still. Keep your voice level. Let the record speak. It has a better memory than rage and a longer reach than grief. And know that I was never angry at you, not one day. A father who cannot outlast his daughter's temper had no business raising a soldier. Stand still, Lena. Let me stand with you one last time. I sat under the oaks, and I let it come. Finally. All of it. 9 years. With my daughter's voice 10 feet away explaining to the dandelions that they were going to be a bouquet. Then I said it out loud because documents are his language, but I am still my mother's daughter too, and some things need air. You were right. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Thank you for standing post. Wind in the oaks. Take from that what you want. I know what I take. I told Ella about him on the drive up. The true parts, sized for 6. That Grandpa was a soldier who became a paper soldier. That he wrote things down so nobody could take them, that he never met her but he left her a present anyway, and the present was the house, and also, in a way, this whole ordinary Saturday. Did he know me? She asked from the booster seat. He knew there would be a you, I said. He planned for you before you were real. That was his way of loving people. She thought about it for a mile. That's like homework, she said. But for love, and I had to drive the next mile very carefully because 6-year-olds will hand you the whole truth like it is a dandelion. Ella brought the dandelion bouquet and set it against the stone and read the last line the way 6-year-olds read, 1 word at a time, with her finger. Put it in writing. She looked at me. That's silly. That's Grandpa, I said. Same thing, mostly. Saul Bergman comes to Sunday dinner now, first Sunday of every month, gray suit and all. He carries the buckle briefcase even to dinner. I asked him once what was in it on a Sunday. Crayons, he said, with the straightest face in the history of the Bar Association. It was true. He keeps them in a deposition folder. He and Ella have a ritual. She draws something, a plane, a dog, our house, and he takes out a rubber stamp he had made, filed with Grandpa Saul, and stamps the corner, very officially, and she signs her whole name after, tongue out, and he inspects it and says, "Every time, your grandfather would have proofed this twice." The fridge is a records office now. It should have been her grandfather. I know. Some Sundays it is all I can see, the empty chair where all that patience should be sitting, but grief and gratitude turn out to share a table just fine. One more scene, because grace is not a feeling, it is a practice, and I promised myself I would practice it where it is hardest. Saturday exchanges during the supervised stretch happened at a family center with tired carpet and a coffee machine older than the marriage. Derek showed early to everyone, I will say that. The third week, standing in the doorway while Ella collected her backpack, he tried. "I'm sorry, Lena. However it sounds, I am. I have thought a lot about what I said back, and I would say it again, word for word. Be on time, be kind to her, tell her the truth even when it costs you. That is the whole apology I need, and it is due every week for the rest of your life." He nodded. To his credit, 40 pounds of pride went unsaid. He has been on time. It is a start. It is not forgiveness with a bow on it, and I will not perform that for anyone. It is a working arrangement with the truth. My father would recognize it. It is a trust that does not shout. They pinned the gold oak leaves on the 10th of July on the parade ground under trees that reminded me of a hill behind a Methodist church. Major Ashford. My commander did one shoulder, Ella standing on a folding chair in her party dress, absolutely certain this ceremony was also somewhat about her, did the other, tongue out, very focused. She only stabbed me a little. Battle damage. Acceptable. Saul Bergman sat in the front row in the gray suit, buckled briefcase on his knees because he does not trust folding chairs, and when I saluted the flag, I saw him touch 2 fingers to his hatless head, old school, for somebody who was not there, and entirely was. Lieutenant Colonel Stanton shook my hand after, and held it 1 extra beat. Major Ashford. That letter I wrote the court. A pause, dry as Bergman's. I ran it past the wing first. Everything in it survived legal review. You should know the Air Force does not exaggerate on the record, even for its own. Understood, ma'am. Good. Now go home. That is an order somebody should have given you months ago. I went home. Both words still feel like a promotion. The house is quiet now, and ours, held in trust for the girl asleep down the hall, under a ceiling of glow stars we moved from the guest room. Because she asked, and because in our family now, nobody sleeps under borrowed sky. On the mantel where they belong, the photos back out of the drawer, a crayon airplane, a framed clipping of a young pilot by a jet, from a small-town paper from a proud man's top drawer. If my story has taught you anything, let it be this. The people who love you leave more behind than money. They leave records, write the letter, file the paper, make the call you are too angry to make because 9 years is longer than any argument. And if someone ever tries to take what you built, do not become what they are. Stand still. Keep your voice level. Let the truth do its work because the truth, properly filed, does not expire. If this story reached you, share it with someone who is standing still in their own storm right now and needs to know the ground can hold. Tell me in the comments if you have ever gotten a letter that arrived exactly when it had to, from someone who could not deliver it themselves. I read everyone. And if you want more stories about courage, justice, and hope, subscribe and you will find them here waiting, like a porch light left on. Thank you for listening to my story, all the way to the end. It matters more than you know. The end.